For 700 years, humanity has been haunted by a single cold case. The story we told ourselves was straightforward, logical, and accepted by every historian from London to Los Angeles. Between 1346 and 1353, a plague swept across Europe with the force of a biological tidal wave, liquidating somewhere between 75 million and 200 million people, wiping out 60% of the entire European population in less than a decade. It remains the most efficient killing machine in recorded human history. And for generations, scholars pointed a finger at a single suspect, China. The Silk Road connected the Far East to Europe, and medieval chronicles spoke of a great pestilence travelling along those ancient trade arteries from the Orient. But there was a problem with this story, a massive, glaring problem that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century, buried in two forgotten cemeteries near a lake in Central Asia. We were looking in the wrong country, and we were looking in the wrong decade. The first crack in the official story appeared in the 1880s, not in a high-tech lab, but under the shovels of Russian archaeologists. While excavating burial sites in the Shui Valley of modern-day Kyrgyzstan, they stumbled upon something statistically impossible. The cemeteries, in the foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains near Lake Issyk-Kul, contained hundreds of graves. When researchers examined the tombstones, they noticed a terrifying pattern. In a normal year, this small trading community would see perhaps 5 or 6 burials, but the stones revealed that in just 2 years, 1338 and 1339, 118 people had been laid to rest. This was a mortality spike of nearly 2,000%. Even more chilling were the inscriptions written in Syriac, an ancient language of the Nestorian Christians. One inscription stated that this was the tomb of the believer Sanmak, and that he died of pestilence. Pestilence, in 1338, that is 8 years before the Black Death supposedly arrived in Europe. For over a century, these graves sat in academic limbo, a smoking gun with no fingerprints. Historians knew they existed, and some speculated they might be connected to the Black Death. But without concrete biological proof, the China theory remained dominant. That all changed in 2018. Historian Philip Slavin from the University of Stirling decided to reopen the cold case. He looked at that death spike, 118 people dying in a small trading outpost, and realized this wasn't just a local tragedy, it was ground zero. If he could prove these people died of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes plague, it would rewrite everything. But he needed more than stone inscriptions. He needed the killer's DNA. Slavin assembled a team of geneticists from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany, led by Maria Spirou and Johannes Kraus. Their target was specific: human teeth stored at the Peter the Great Museum in St. Petersburg. Teeth are the black boxes of the human body. The dense enamel protects the soft pulp inside from centuries of contamination. If Sanmak died of plague, the bacteria would be trapped inside, frozen in time. Using accelerator mass spectrometry, the team drilled into the teeth of 7 individuals dated to 1338 and 1339. They extracted samples from the pulp chamber and began sequencing ancient DNA. The results were immediate and unequivocal. 3 of the 7 tested positive for Yersinia pestis. These people didn't just die of a sickness, they died of the plague. But finding the plague was just the beginning. The real revolution happened when researchers sequenced the full genome of this ancient bacterium. Scientists have long known that the Black Death was not caused by a single strain. It was caused by a massive Big Bang diversification event, a moment when one ancestral strain suddenly exploded into 4 major lineages, known as Branch 1, Branch 2, Branch 3, and Branch 4. Every single plague outbreak over the next 500 years, from the Great Plague of London in 1665 to modern cases in Madagascar, traces back to one of these 4 branches. The pandemic that killed poets and kings and peasants across 3 continents all originated from this single evolutionary explosion. But until now, no one knew where or when this Big Bang occurred. We had found the descendants, but never the parent. When Spirou analysed the Kyrgyzstan genome, she found something extraordinary. The ancient strain did not belong to any of the 4 branches. It sat exactly at the node, the evolutionary trunk where all four connected and diverged. This strain was the common ancestor. We found the Black Death's biological Adam, and we know its exact date in 1338. To confirm this, the researchers turned to nature. Plague is zoonotic. It starts in rodents, not humans. If these graves truly represented the origin point, then the closest living relatives of that 1338 strain should still be circulating in the region's animals. The team compared the ancient genome to modern plague bacteria collected from wild rodents across Eurasia. The results were perfect. Modern plague strains in marmots living in the Tian Shan Mountains, right where the graves were found, are the closest genetic relatives to the ancient bacteria in Sanmak's tooth. The geographic and genetic evidence aligned. Johannes Krause called it pinpointing the Wuhan of the Black Death. But how did a local outbreak become a global apocalypse? The archaeological record tells the story. These were not simple farmers. The graves contained pearls, coins, and luxury goods from the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, and Iran. These were merchants moving goods along the Silk Road, the medieval world's most important commercial highway. The catalyst was likely climate. Paleoclimate records suggest that around 1338, the region experienced unusual temperature shifts and rainfall patterns. These environmental stresses forced wild marmots out of their high-altitude burrows and into closer contact with human settlements. Marmots are natural reservoirs for Yersinia pestis. The bacteria circulate harmlessly in their populations carried by fleas. It only took one flea. One flea jumped from a dying marmot to a human, and the bacterium made the species leap. Once it entered the trading community, the Silk Road's efficiency turned against humanity. Caravans moved constantly westward, carrying silk, spices, and unknowingly infected fleas. From Kyrgyzstan, the plague reached the Black Sea by 1346. Then merchant ships carried it to Mediterranean ports in 1347. By 1348, Europe was burning. Discovery also solves a genetic mystery. When researchers first sequenced medieval plague genomes from London, Paris, and Barcelona, they were confused by the diversity. It was not one strain hitting all these cities. It was multiple genetically distinct lineages appearing almost simultaneously. This did not match a single outbreak spreading from one source. The Kyrgyzstan discovery explains why. The diversification happened in Central Asia 8 years before reaching Europe. The disease had time to evolve and split into variants during its 1,000-mile journey west. It did not arrive in European ports as a single soldier. It arrived as an army of different variants. This pre-existing genetic diversity is why the pandemic spread with such devastating efficiency. By the time physicians in Italy realized what was happening, they were not fighting one disease. They were fighting four. There is a haunting coda to this story. The disease never truly left. It still circulates quietly in marmot populations in the Tian Shan foothills, maintained in a natural reservoir, waiting for the right environmental conditions. In 2013, a 15-year-old boy in Kyrgyzstan died of bubonic plague after being bitten by an infected flea, the first recorded fatality in the region in 30 years. The biological engine that drove the Black Death is still idling. The people buried in those graves, Sanmak, and 117 others who died alongside him, had no idea what they had unleashed. They were traders, mothers, fathers and children going about their lives in a remote corner of Central Asia. They could not have known that the pestilence killing their neighbors would become the most catastrophic pandemic in human history, reshaping societies, toppling governments, and rewriting the foundations of 3 continents. But their DNA, preserved for nearly 700 years in the pulp of their teeth, has finally spoken. The Black Death did not begin in the mysterious East. It began in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan, in a small trading post along the Silk Road in the year 1338. And now, for the first time in 7 centuries, we know exactly where and when the nightmare started. Thank you for watching this episode of Strata Files. If you enjoyed this investigation, please like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments. What other cold cases from history do you think ancient DNA is waiting to solve? We'll see you in the next layer.